Thank you so much for chatting with me, Raoul. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to talk about the film with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Silver Dollar Road is an incredible film. Heart-wrenching, and absolutely upsetting in so many ways. I was wondering what excited you to tell this story? What drew you to the Gertrude's family, the Reals?
Well, I was fortunate that ProPublica and Juvi Production and Amazon contacted me and wanted me at first to execute produce the project. They all have been working on it for at least 3 years.
Mm.
Of course, they knew what story they had in their hands. And they have been also documenting. That's why I have this incredible trove of archives that I could use, because those great moments in the life of the family, and it's not something you can just fall upon. They had to really do the legwork about that, and not knowing what they would ultimately do with it. And at one point, they needed a filmmaker to give it life and to tell the story in a way that a wider audience could understand it and become a film, much more than just the data and the narrative of that story.
It's interesting you say that because some of the power of this film very much is that old footage. We see them just as families together in that space, and it really adds to the hurt behind what happens. I was just wondering, from your perspective, what do you think the power of land truly is? This because this is so rooted in this legal battle over that space. What is the true power of land?
Listen, the power of land, as you call it, or land, is has always been central in the life of societies. It started with land, and capitalism was able to develop because they chased people from their land, and so they had to go and sell their workforce to factories. But most people, when they have their land, they had also it was their livelihood. That's what made a village. That was made commerce. You could exchange your whatever you grow with other people. So it's central. And even, whatever the size you take it, the history of this country in particular, people were enslaved to work the land. Indigenous people were chased from their land. The whole history of this country is part of that. The founding fathers were all real estate men. We forget those things. So it's just the continuation of this fundamental story, that original sin that is perpetuating through all those other stories that bring families like the Reals deprived from what they are, which is their identity and their livelihood.
You know what? I like that you bring that together there because I mean when we think about land, I mean oftentimes we think about the commerce. That's the first thing we think of is and that. But you said the word identity there. And I was wondering for you, how does that particularly tie in with this particular space? Because when we think of the land, to me, initially we just think about the work, but there's something here that ties in deeply with the reels themselves.
Yeah, well, they were born there. They lived all their life. Imagine the grandmother, Gertrude Reals. She was born in the land. She's 95 years old, 96 now. She spent all her life on that piece of land.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know anything else. That's where she grew. That's where she was an independent woman. She had her farm. She grew her stuff herself, sell them on the market. Everything centered there. Her children were born there, our grandchildren were born there. So, it means much more than just than value, than material value. It's a community as well, you know, not only symbolically, but people of the whole region came there in the 20s, the 30s, because there was not many beaches where they could go. When they tell you that they felt at ease there because they didn't feel they were targeted.
Yeah.
Those are moments of life. You can't, that's where you belong. That's the only place, by the way, where you feel you belong. Because everywhere else, you're pushed, you have to prove that you are from here, or how did you get this? And no, there at least they, even to be, safe from the police or anything else. So it's a very strong feeling that defines you, and to be attacked on that side, to be deprived of that, it's really traumatic.
Well, and one of the films that one of the things that the film really speaks to is the deeply rooted racism within the legal system itself, which is honestly, I mean, for me personally, is a new revelation in so many ways. Not that racism exists in our culture, but how embedded it is within the system itself is
Well, for having been on the side of a public servant, I know how hard it is to have a law voted.
Right.
Uh, and what we see here, it's yes, it's a structural racism or a structural problem, but it's mostly what powerful people does with those laws. There was other way to use those, and by the way, some of them, even partition law, or there are the Torrance Act. Sometimes there were laws voted to deal with the issue, to make it better, but power structure use it to deprive people from their land. They use it as instrument for their own power. And that's what happened again. Usually, unfortunately, the legislative branch is one battle too late. And that's what we have been seeing those last decades. It's like it's hard to keep up. And I hope that there are laws that can be. By the way, there is a law that support a program to help people that are on this heirs property situation, and unfortunately they might be discontinued, and so Congress need to vote on that and give more money to be able, because there are a lot of people working on that, association, collective, lawyers, pro bono people, and they need that support to help families, collectivities, and lots of group of people to defend their property.
Yeah, and there's I'm glad you're saying that, because that was one of the things, is what could be done to prevent this. But there seems to be something too about the power of together, or the power of resistance that comes through this story, through the Reels family and their
Yeah,
in
there's a lot to be done. It's no question, and thanks God, ProPublica have done an incredible job to unearth that story, and not only that story, but the whole context and the whole structural bias. And there are people, scholars, and again groups working on those, and we need to, people. By the way, a lot of families are in the same situation. you know
Yeah.
and so it's nothing rare, and I've seen people watching the film saying, oh my God, I had forgotten that my parents had that problem, and they never talked to me about that because it was so traumatic.
Mhm.
Or our grandfather are still there on the land, but they lost 90% of it. Every family has that kind of story, because we were not just born everybody in the city, in the big cities. Mostly people came to the city to work because a lot of the time it was impossible for them to retain their original properties. So it has to do with wealth building, you know. It deprives you with one of the most important instrument to build wealth, you know, and that's why people are buying land. You know, people who has a lot of money, they are buying land and they make it inaccessible for people who have less money, you know. And another way to that happen also in smaller communities is like if the mayor or the whoever is in charge decide to in conjunction with economic interest to raise the taxes, you know, the people can't compete, they can't stay on their own land
Yeah.
because it's not monetary, it's not cash, you know. And but if your taxes go, you know, 20, 50, 60% in the matter of a few years, at one point you can't pay for that, you know? And so it's a huge problem, and it's much more current than people think.
Yeah, I mean, as the film ends and the statistics come up there as well, it pulls the film back to remind us it's not just their story;
Yeah,
it's the story of countless others.
yeah. And that
Um,
was important for me making this movie. It's I didn't want to, you know, usually, you know, there are documentaries who dealt with problems like this, and but it makes it at the distance where okay, it's a great story, traumatic, and there are characters who went through disastrous trauma, and then at the end there is maybe a happy end or something, but we can feel disconnected from that, and I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to make sure that it's a society problem. It's not just the Rios family. The Rios family are the people telling us the story, but it's bigger than that. And I think the way a character like Mami speak as well, you can see that she has a very clear idea of what's going on, and she sees it beyond herself. You know, when she said, you know, 60 years since Martin Luther King, you know, nothing have changed for us, or we don't believe in the justice. And whether she's right or not, this is her experience
yeah,
with the justice system. This is her human experience with the community where she lives. You know, so we have to take that seriously.
absolutely. We're out of time. Raul, honestly, thank you so much for your candor and for your heart behind the film. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you, and I wish you the best with it. It truly is wonderful.
Well, thank you. Just spread the news. That's all I ask. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.